As far as human knowledge goes, there is but one single planet capable of holding life: Earth. That is, if we limit ourselves to real planets. Today we'll be following evolution of plants, animals, and fungi on a simulated world of a game called The Sapling. This world is called Vibrance, which consists of two larger island groups, Forum and Consa, which can be further separated into Crimson Hills, Pinky, Desert, Liminal, and Pathway. At the dawn of the planet's history, a red algae named Bewoodum appeared on the ocean's surface near the Crimson Hills. But it didn't stay there for long, as some members of its species evolved to rather grow on the bottom of the ocean floor, quickly populating the waters all around. And so, as the algae was abundant, a being swam up to the scene, a very first animal, Hadatops. Its blue colors contrasting the red backdrop of Bewoodum, which now became a source of nourishment, allowing the animal to multiply and evolve from fins that allowed it to swim to legs that allowed it to walk on the ocean floor. With the pressure of being eaten, it was no wonder we could soon after observe the algae evolve into plants, burrowing their roots deep into the soil of Crimson Hills Beach. Yet, Willem, the newly evolved plant, didn't stay alone for long, for it was time for the last being to appear on the surface of Vibrance. A green fungi named Lithanovia reached for the sun on the very same shore of Crimson Hills. Though unrelated, it was about at the same time that Hadatops evolved into different shades of blues and greens. As time passed, the animals evolved eyes that allowed them to distinguish colors while keeping the full field of view, as well as mouth for eating fresh meat. Those and other adaptations allowed them to spread all over the sea between Forum and Kansa, all while Crimson Hills became truly red as grass evolved and filled the gaps between the larger plants. Oh, what is that? There is something truly interesting happening. A Hadatops is slowly climbing out of the waters, even giving birth to a new member of its species on the dry floors of Pinky. Truly remarkable. The little land Hadatops made it into adulthood, where a purple Hadatops joined it on the land. Could this be the start of the land animals? Sadly not. The timing just wasn't right. Perhaps if this was the Crimson Hills, it would have a higher chance of success. But on this barren land, there was no food that would allow it to survive and reproduce. And there was going to be a long time before another animal not only tries, but truly thrives outside its ancestors' home. The sea inside Forum, but also around, was so heavily populated you could see the animals and even patches of algae from all the way up in space. Returning back to the fungi on top of the Crimson Hills, we can observe evolutionary changes. Blue colors and pointy caps, which increase the number of spores an individual could produce. Speaking of reproducing, it was soon after when we could notice the hearts announcing that the animals evolved sexual reproduction, which is a huge step, as it allows for much greater genetic diversity, thus making the species as a whole more resilient to whatever life throws at it. Checking back on Pinky, it seems it had a few more failed attempts at animals climbing out of the waters. But there did evolve a plant named Dapai, which did look very similar to Willem, not because it evolved from it, but because they shared a common ancestor, the very first algae Bewoodum. Separating from its ancestors, Lulura found space on Pinky and Desert, where it evolved a cup-like shape which changed the way it spread spores from being carried by wind to raindrops. As the sea continues to burst with life, we can observe a peculiar mouth mutation, a filter feeder, which allows for a diet of strictly blood. Not only that, but it's also seen as attractive by other hadatops. So it's no wonder we can see quite a few of them with this mutation, as well as some with colorful stripes. The plant tapi seemed to only last about 1,000 years, mostly dying from old age, with the rest being eaten by Lennevises, offspring of hadatops. Some of Lennevises evolved an instinct of following the light in the dark, but all of them were clearly separated from their parent species by a visual distinction, for their colors were purple instead of green hues that at that time dominated the hadatop species. On the shores of Liminal, a new species of plants named Walex evolved and quickly started populating the soil around. Even though the waters around Forum and even between Forum and Kansa were bursting with life, some corners of the world were almost empty, if not for the carcasses from the animals that traveled a bit too far, or some fungi that managed to root itself on the barren land. Walex, unlike its extinct cousin species, managed to survive quite well by evolving into grass. Alas, on the Crimson Hills there evolved Gertates, which truly thrived among the red grassy hills, with short white, green or yellow bodies, green eyes that allowed them to see both in the water as well as outside of it, having the ability to distinguish red and green colors, all while still being able to somewhat see on the land at night, though at that time their vision is drastically reduced. Gertates had limbs that allowed them to walk on land, even on steep terrain, such as the hills they evolved on. Their mouths, a relic from their past, which allowed them to eat blood, animals, meat, and plants, carrying one simple instinct of going towards food. Still, though most died from old age, starvation was still a close second place contender. Then, a subspecies of hadatops evolved flight and quickly changed the dynamic, filling the Crimson Hills with green colors and flying all over the world. Watching the evolution on Vibrance for over 10,000 years, Desert didn't establish a permanent plant population. Crimson Hills stayed as red as they were from the time the very first plant evolved. Pinky evolved pink grass, and even a small patch of green grass. Plants only grew on the eastern side of Liminal while leaving a path of separation on Pathway. But the evolution never stops, even on such a simple planet, without seasons or moving continents, both already available in the game. Plants, animals, and fungi kept on evolving, changing, responding to their environments, and evolving some more.